Welcome back to the third Saturday in October, your SEC Tailgate podcast. For the rest of us, it's rivalry week here in the SEC. We got a bunch of big games. We got Egg Bowls. We got Iron Bowls. We got, I don't know what you call Tennessee Vanderbilt, but we got some games coming up. And I've got a baby with me who will hopefully stay sleeping for most of the episode. We will find out. I am Tennessee Bradley. I'm here with Alabama Chris. AC, it's Thanksgiving, and I will be much more thankful if my team gets a win this weekend.
Well, I think that you can probably go ahead and put a W in the column there for you guys playing Vandy, as we have seen that Vandy is, again, showing up as the whipping boy of the SEC. But, this season has been wild, and a lot of things have gone different ways than we anticipated them originally. And so I'm going to say an easy W for you guys this week. But for me, I don't even know if we're coming out of this week with a win, even though we're already ready to go to the SEC championship 2 weeks from now. So, or a little over a week from now. But, man, this is shaping up to be an interesting, exciting, nerve-wracking season for most of us here. But, man, I feel like Tennessee is in a good position to move into the postseason into next year, too.
Well, my background is the sinking of the SS Commodore, and I hope that's what happens this weekend in Knoxville. But we shall see. This is why we play the games, and this is the third Saturday in October podcast. Chris, let's run down some scores from last week. Georgia put a hurting on Charleston Southern 56-7. Yeah. Texas A&M beat Prairie View 52-3. Mississippi State over Tennessee State 55-10. Seeing a trend of big wins here. Kentucky over New Mexico State 56-16. Alabama squeaking by Arkansas 42-35. Florida loses to Missouri and gets their coach fired. Bye-bye, Cousin Eddie. Bye-bye, Dan Mullen. 24-23 in overtime. Then South Carolina beat Auburn. Really shocked with this outcome. 21-17. Tennessee beat South Alabama 60-14. Ole Miss beats Vanderbilt 31-17, and LSU beats UL Monroe 27-14. So, I mean, I was shocked that Missouri beat Florida. Shocked that South Carolina beat Auburn. Everything else, not too shocking. I mean, that Alabama score, didn't quite expect that, but also seeing what Arkansas has been able to do, I wasn't too surprised. How'd you feel, Chris?
Yeah, I agree with you in almost all of those things. Again, a lot of people considered last week a kind of a cupcake week, especially when you got people like Georgia playing Charleston Southern or Texas A&M playing Prairie View, Mississippi State playing Tennessee State, Kentucky playing New Mexico State. New Mexico State, man, 2 weeks in a row being whooped up on by SEC teams.
Hey, they get the frequent flyer points, so it doesn't, it's not all a waste.
Yeah, that's true. And I know now more about those Aggies than I thought that I ever would, paying attention to them for 2 weeks in a row. But so not a lot of excitement or upsets when it comes to those more cupcakey games. But that Alabama-Arkansas game, sure. Yeah, it was a bit more concerning than I would have hoped it would be. It was closer than I hoped it would be. I would have loved Alabama to cover. But again, this will speak to in a few minutes making picks for this week's games. But it just Alabama is one of those to where, as much as I am a fan and I'm excited for the win, I can't trust them when it comes to a pick'em thing. I feel like that I get it's like Missouri and Kentucky and Alabama. And Mississippi State to a large degree as well. That every week I'm like, I see what the pros, what the critics, what the commentators are saying that they should do. That rarely ever comes into play when it comes to Mississippi State or Alabama or Kentucky or Missouri. So there's a lot of those teams out there. But as much as Arkansas played a great game and Alabama played a good game, in some aspects, a record-breaking game, but not to the level that we have seen Alabama play at for multiple seasons, back to back, all of this. And so it is interesting to be second in the country, to be and maybe hopped by Ohio State, and deservingly so if they've been hopped by Ohio State. But it's not the dominant performance that we've seen from Bama in the past. But it's interesting to see yourself second or third in the nation, and it can be considered a disappointing season. But when you have a loss from a Texas A&M team that you were favored by, I think, 2 or 3 touchdowns, that's what's going to happen. So if the defense can figure themselves out, I see next week doing better, but still a surprise to see how close it got with Arkansas. Other than that, that Auburn South Carolina game, I was absolutely ready to see Auburn, even with a Bo Nix-less offense, to at least win the game. But losing again by 4, it's a bummer, and people are starting to question Brian Harsin and some of those decisions that he's made. But again, you're missing several pieces of an offense that, when all together and all gelling, can be dynamic. But even there, you have a quarterback that has been up and down, so not a lot of consistency that you could hope for. But still surprising when you lose to South Carolina.
And they were picked, I think, to come in last in the SEC West. They were not expected to do well. And Brian Harsin has them overachieving. So I think some of that early success kind of set up for some letdown here towards the end of the season. I mean, you got injury bug, you know, some of the things that you've been doing with your new system, some people have figured out. I think it was more injury bug and just trying to get through the season that kind of bit Auburn this last weekend. Yeah.
And isn't it wild that we are such fans of fans of a game that can be thrown into chaos when one person out of 11 goes down, or, you build your team to say that, like, as long as these starters stay healthy, we're good. But if one of these go down, the dominoes start to fall pretty quickly in and around that individual injury or disqualification or whatever the reason they wouldn't show up for a game. But so funny that, like, again, I think it was 2 years ago is when Tua went down, our all-star quarterback for Alabama, during a series that he shouldn't have been in anyway. And so then you're like, why do you put the player in? But then there's other people like, why is it so important that this game falls apart if you don't have one of your stars in there? Right. It's wild, but that's what makes it so interesting and fun. Just to round out my idea, like, Florida losing is a huge shock, but it makes sense now on the back end of them losing and seeing what their season has become. It's like, well, there's a lot of issues there that are not going to be taken care of, even if they had pulled out a win against Missouri the other day.
Yeah. So Dan Mullen is gone. And I hate it because I wanted to beat him. I was hoping he'd stick around one more year so that we could, but I'm also glad he's gone, because with a new coach comes a new opportunity for Tennessee to win as well. Try to break that curse. I've heard rumors that Bill Napier of Louisiana is already, like, in the final discussions, just kind of fine tuning a contract. Again, it's just rumors. And Florida fans that I've heard talking about it seem pretty mixed. Some like it, some don't. But we'll see what happens there. Again, if they're close, with the new early signing day in December, it makes it harder for these teams who fire their coaches, because you hire a coach right after the season. If they can make a hire before the end of the season, will that help recruiting? It'll be an interesting experiment to watch. So we'll just have to see what's going on there. And you and I were kind of talking about this beforehand. For the Heisman, like, I don't feel like there's a real front runner this year. It feels like, because Georgia, the number one team in the country, has been going back and forth with quarterbacks a little bit. Neither one of them has to play spectacular, and neither of them does, partly because they're almost always playing with a lead, but also they just don't need to.
Yeah.
Not when you've got a defense that can score points and a defense that prevents the other team from scoring points. You don't have to do a whole lot on offense to do a whole lot on offense. So I don't know. It feels like this is a tough pick for Heisman this year.
Yeah, I agree. It just there's not a lot of excitement. The things that I have heard, and again, this is from a pro Alabama. I would love it if an Alabama fan or an Alabama player won the Heisman every year and we won the national championship every year because that's just fun for me. But knowing that, like, I'm watching the conversations around Heisman, and there's actual conversation, but none of it seems like, oh, this person is a shoo-in, or if this team can play well and that player from that team can really have a game, maybe there's some battling there. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of excitement. Right now, I'm seeing kind of a battle between CJ Stroud, the quarterback at Ohio State, and Bryce Young, the quarterback at Alabama. It's kind of the two front runners. And I'll read one list that says that CJ has the advantage, and I'll read another one that says Bryce has the leg up. But it just kind of seems to be those two guys. But there hasn't been like a statement thing. Like I heard early in the season, well, we'll just give it to Bryce because he plays for Alabama and he can rack up a total number of touchdowns to make it look like, well, we got to give it to somebody. This seems like one of those years that there should be a defensive player or like an end that is just hardcore campaigning for the idea of getting themselves in for people who are over teams like Alabama winning the national championship and having somebody at the Heisman. I mean, like, what was it last year? 2, and there could have been a third Alabama player in the talks for Heisman, and there just doesn't seem to be a lot of that this season. So Bryce Young, I think, is playing well enough to be the Heisman. I just don't think that people have a lot of excitement to give it to him because it's like, well, we'll just give it to an Alabama player again, which doesn't seem like it's necessarily earned. It's just kind of built on the Alabama reputation. Yeah. So I can see that argument, but there just doesn't seem to be a lot of excitement, period. But from an SEC perspective right now on most of the lists, I see somebody like Bryce Young coming in right now at like a first or a second place. And then we still have Matt Corral having some conversations from Ole Miss talking about it, but he seems to kind of fall in that 4th or 5th place on the list. So we'll see. But yeah, you're right. There's just not a lot of like I don't hear a lot of people over the moon to see who's going to win this thing. So I don't know if that just means that people are over it or I'm just not looking in the right places this year.
Yeah. I think in some ways it needs, I do wish that it would become an offensive award and then create something that is the equivalent for defense and have the two ceremonies back to back or something. Give the defensive one first so that it all kind of culminates with the Heisman. Maybe you make an offensive and defensive Heisman. Maybe you retroactively go back to 1997 and give the offensive Heisman to Peyton Manning. I'm okay with that. So, yeah, again, this will be interesting to watch. I think Matt Corral with some injuries, I think it was kind of his to lose until he got injured. He had he was having a great season, and then against Tennessee showed he's not just great at passing, he can run too. And I think that kind of helped his Heisman case, but then injury bug, some losses on the schedule that just kind of hurt your chances. So we'll see how this shapes up as the year winds down.
Yeah. Well, I have to just admit too, just as we wrap this up, that like I want to be excited about it too, having Bryce Young as one of those front runners in the race. And I don't want, if Bryce Young ends up winning it, I don't want to take away anything from what he has done because he's put together some an amazing resume. It just, again, like you're saying, it just doesn't have that oomph that it seems like it's had, the excitement, the energy around the Heisman. And maybe we will have more conversation around it in a week or so from right now, when we know how the Iron Bowl has turned out, when we know that Ohio State trounced Michigan, or it was a barely covered game kind of thing, and then going into the championships for the different conferences around. We'll see how this plays out. Maybe that I'm just not feeling it right now because all the excitement's kind of crammed into after the championship. the conferences has been crowned, then we go into more of a let's talk about these individual awards as we get towards the middle of the December area. So we'll see how it plays out, but it definitely does feel odd in the way that it has been. The excitement level has been kind of quelled at this point in the season.
Yeah, maybe there are enough storylines with the teams that the individual awards aren't getting the same airtime. As we wrap up last week, our pick'em winner, with a score of 8 out of 10 games picked correctly. Hashtag we lost our QB, kicker, and eagle in one game. That is all one word because it's a hashtag. But we also had some other great nicknames. And I think just like when you wear, Tennessee's got a black uniform this year. Oregon's got a different uniform every week for the next however long. When you are wearing something fun, sometimes you play better. When you have a cool nickname, sometimes you pick better. But we also had, what do you get when you cross an elephant and a razorback, and to bowl or not to bowl? That is the question.
That's the question.
So great week in picks and awesome names as well. So you can check out all those on our Instagram page where we post the weekly winners and season updates. One other bit of news, Tennessee this week, and even I think some in last week, getting some commitments from players. And I don't know if that's because we're coming off a bye just a couple weeks ago. The coaches were out recruiting really hard. And then some of those players having the opportunity to see games in Knoxville, but glad to see some of that rolling in. Look, they're not all great players, but seeing commitment, seeing players want to come to Knoxville, it's a step in the right direction. So very excited about that. And this happens quite a bit, or I guess every year. Mascots have their own little thing going on during the college football season, and Smokey is currently in the semifinals for mascot of the year. So one of the things was a video that I think fans voted on, and he came in first. But he has won 3 national championships already, and came in second. Was it last year or the year before?
Cool.
But just so I'll mention the SEC mascots. Tennessee Smokey at 1. Auburn's Obby the Tiger is tied at 2. Let's see. We've got Cincinnati tied at 2. Minnesota, Colorado, Wisconsin, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's Boomers, soon to be in SEC. Oklahoma at 7. Iowa, Rutgers, Penn State, Liberty, Louisiana State University, LSU, Mike, the Bayou Bengal Tiger, University of Washington, University of Kentucky.
There we go.
14. So LSU tied at 11, Kentucky at 14, Louisiana Tech, Texas at 16, UAB, Texas State, University of New Mexico is on here twice at 19 and 20 for Lobo Lucy and Lobo Louie.
Oh,
wait. I feel like they're cheating the system with 2 entries, but quite a few SEC mascots on this list. Very excited about that. Tennessee, let's bring Smokey. Let's bring home the national championship.
Yeah,
we need another one of those in Knoxville. So that kind of wraps last week's news. I think it's time to make some picks.
Let's do it, man. I'm ready for this week. We got a lot of good ones.
Yeah. So rivalry week, I've been practicing this last year. Go back, listen to the tapes. I could not say it. But we've got a couple games early. So Chris, you and I will make these picks, but these don't count in our pick'em league. Thursday on ESPN at 6:30. So eat your turkey, get a nap, and then wake up for the Egg Bowl. Ole Miss at Mississippi State. Mississippi State, a 1.5 favorite.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This is one of those games we've been waiting for. I don't know. I feel like Mississippi State had a good showing. Now it's time for them to not have a good showing. It's a rivalry game. I got to go with Ole Miss.
I agree with you. I think that Lane has done a good job over the last couple of weeks of talking up Mike Leach's offensive genius. And I don't think that all of it is just, blowing smoke. I think that there is a lot of validity in what Lane Kiffin said. But I tend to think that coaches, as well as players and staff and teams and fan bases, they will do whatever they can to get an edge. And maybe this is Lane's way of trying to prop up Mike Leach so that when he beats Mike Leach, he looks that much better. But again, this being in Starkville at Mississippi State, only getting a 1.5, that says that these teams are pretty evenly matched.
Mm-hmm.
But even that, on paper, maybe I can see it. And Mississippi State's had a late season surge here. But Ole Miss, I feel like that has been consistently where they need to be all season, even with some of those injuries. So I'm sticking with Ole Miss as my pick to outright win this game, even if the pundits and the picks say Mississippi State by a 1.5.
Yeah. And then on CBS on Friday at 2:30, Missouri going to Arkansas. I guess Arkansas LSU is battle of the boot. I don't know what you'd call this, but Arkansas, Missouri, Arkansas by 14.5. I don't know. Missouri just beat Florida. Like I said last week, is the team, and I don't necessarily think it was Missouri that I was talking about. It was South Carolina. But are they confident or are they hungover? And I think they're confident. I still feel like Arkansas wins this, but not by 14.5. I think it's still going to be like a 10-point game or something like that.
Yeah. I think that's smart. And I'm only picking against you to make it more interesting for you and I to see who's picking better, because I absolutely kind of think the same thing. I feel like that both of these teams, Missouri had a big win over Florida, a big rival for theirs in the East. Arkansas had a close loss to second placed Alabama. But I feel like I'm going to say Arkansas covers by 14.5, simply because Arkansas is going to want to make a statement and come back and win, which I think that they can do against Missouri without much issues. But can they do it by 14.5 points? I say they do, because Missouri, and this is an earlier game, they're coming off of only 6 days to prepare for this game, including Thanksgiving and all that kind of stuff. They played Florida to the end in OT to win that game. So maybe that will come back to haunt them enough to where Arkansas can get that 14.5 points. So I say Arkansas covers.
Well, it's a really hard one to pick. So I can't really argue against you there. So Saturday, these are the games that are on our pick 'em list. So go to Third Saturday in October to get these picks in. Georgia at Georgia Tech. Georgia, a 35-point favorite, Saturday, 11 a.m. on ABC. I'm going with Georgia. That defense, it's hard for me to pick against them, even when the spread's 35.
Yeah, I agree. I am picking against them only because maybe, and again, it's hard to put Georgia in a comparison with other teams this year just because they're so far ahead of everybody, especially defensively. But I thought maybe, just maybe, Kirby has them looking a little further towards Atlanta and the SEC championship game the week after. So maybe they don't play up to as dominant because they don't have to. They just have to win kind of thing. And so maybe they keep it within winning by 21 or so. Still a dominant win, but not the 35 points that currently is out there as a spread. So I say Georgia Tech definitely doesn't allow them, or Georgia themselves don't cover, but it's more of because they're looking forward to staying as healthy as possible for the SEC championship in a few days from then. So I take Georgia Tech.
All right. And then Florida State at Florida, 11 a.m. on ESPN. Florida, a 2.5-point favorite after firing Dan Mullen? I don't think so, Tim. I'm going with Florida State.
For the outright win or to keep it, I guess it's hard with it's only 2.5 points, but
I see Florida State winning this.
Me too. Yeah, I'm picking Florida State as well. I just Florida, this is your dumpster fire year. Last season it was LSU, which it still turned into their own issues for this season, but not quite the dumpster fire in the way that it was defined last year after coming off that historic year. Florida Gators coming off a pretty good year last year where they went over Georgia to the SEC championship. Now they find their coach fired and the team kind of falling apart. So I say Florida State has a chance to get a rare in-state win over the Florida Gators. And so I'd say Florida State takes it.
Yeah. And then on CBS at 2:30, we have the Iron Bowl taking place on the Plains. Alabama, a 19.5-point favorite. Chris, tell me your pick.
Alabama, you're not going to do me any favors when it comes to picking spreads. Maybe if it was just is Alabama going to win or not, I can be a bit more accurate in my predictions. I say this is another one of these to where playing Arkansas last week, they were supposed to win. Alabama was supposed to win by close to 3 touchdowns. It looks like that we're right around that again for this game. But I think that Auburn, with that embarrassing loss last week, and then it's the Iron Bowl, I say that Alabama wins this one, but they keep it closer because maybe they also are just trying to stay healthy, or they're already looking ahead to the SEC championship game or whatever it is. But they can keep it to where they can be successful and win, but not by 19.5 points. So I would be very surprised if they actually cover this game. So I'm picking Auburn, actually.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think Alabama wins this because of the injuries that Auburn has sustained. Most importantly, to their War Eagle. Then we've got at 2:45. Interesting kickoff time, but hey, ESPN doing what they want on the SEC network. Vanderbilt going to Knoxville to take on the Volunteers. Tennessee by 31. Give me Tennessee.
Give me Tennessee. I'll basically pick whatever is the opposite of Vanderbilt, whatever they're playing. So Tennessee, let's do it.
Yeah. So skip ahead to the evening slate. At 6:00 on ESPN, we've got Texas A&M at LSU. A&M is 6.5-point favorite. I'm going with A&M. I don't know. I think they're better than this. I think they're better than 6.5 over LSU.
That's exactly what I thought. It was actually it felt a little insulting to A&M to only be a 6.5-point favorite to LSU. So I easily pick Texas A&M. Maybe other people out there that are making these lines know more than me, but I feel like that Texas A&M has a lot more in their tank to really take it to LSU this season, especially knowing they're not going to the championship now for their own self. It's like this can be a statement win to see where they're going to end up bowling. So I say Texas A&M easy 6.5 points.
Yeah, pride is a big motivator. Then
100%.
A couple of SEC ACC matchups at 6:30 on ESPN2. Kentucky at Louisville. Louisville, a 2.5-point favorite, but I'm going with the Wildcats.
Me too. I just feel like that Kentucky, they've got it. Louisville, I don't think is having a bad season, but I still think that Kentucky could take this, even if it is in Louisville. I don't think that home field advantage is going to be able to take it to where the Wildcats don't actually win this one outright. So I pick Kentucky as well.
Well, I mean, Louisville's 6-5, Kentucky's 8-3. Really? You're going to favor Louisville? Whatever. Mm-hmm. Then on the SEC network, also at 6:30, Clemson visits South Carolina. Clemson, an 11.5-point favorite. This is not Clemson's year, and I'm picking South Carolina to cover the spread. Heck, they could even win. Who knows? They may be going into this game with some confidence after beating Florida, beating Auburn. Hey, we've beat some teams in the SEC. Let's go beat Clemson in the ACC. Take advantage of a down year. I can see it.
Absolutely. I feel like that South Carolina has a real chance to win this one and to really prove their doubters wrong when it comes to this. And so I think that South Carolina has a chance, a rare chance, especially in the last decade or so, to actually pull out an outright win here. I say that South Carolina is going to do everything that they can to make that a reality. So I think the bigger question in my head is, if it's playing on the SEC network, is it also simulcast over on the ACC network as well, just to give Clemson their stuff? It would be weird if Alabama was playing Clemson and it only appeared on the ACC network. I would have a little bit of umbrage taken there. So I wonder if they're going to simulcast it in some way. But nonetheless, I say South Carolina has a chance to at least keep the spread from covering, if not outright win this one. So I'm picking South Carolina as well.
So those are our picks. Look, we're happy with them. If you aren't happy with them, go make your own picks. Go over to thirdsaturdayiNoctober.com to make those picks. And while you're there, sign up for our virtual tailgate, because that's when we watch football together. And speaking of watching football together, Chris, what time is it?
It's time to pregame, baby.
Tailgate, man cave, living room, pregame, burgers, ribs, chicken, wings, chip and dip, pregame, scotch and a lot of IPA, Coca-Cola, pregame, slaying darts, EA, cornhole, pregame. How you gonna watch?
So, pregame. How you gonna watch? Chris, how are you watching the games this weekend?
Man, it's that time of year. This will be post-Thanksgiving, post-Black Friday, just nestle in with like a bunch of snacks or leftovers from Thanksgiving and just enjoy the day. I'm going to be at home. I don't foresee that changing. I almost was at the Alabama-Arkansas game last week, but it just didn't quite happen. So I almost had to eat my words and where I was going to be last week for tailgating or for pre-gaming. But this week, going to be home, comfortable, cozy, on the couch in front of that TV. How about you, man?
Stretchy pants in full force.
Heck yeah.
Look, I'll probably now be watching a lot more games on the radio. I don't mind. I love watching games on the radio, either chasing the 2-year-old around or keeping this newborn happy. But then I will be, again, like last week, on our virtual tailgate, at least for the first hour. So we'll kick that off at 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern. And if this happens, I may duck out early. But join us there. Again, virtual tailgate, our Pick'em League, be a part of it, because you can win some of these cool Third Saturday in October stickers.
Ta-da, baby.
And this is my son saying, roll Vols.
Well, good for you, baby Minigan, for keeping it together this whole episode. Those Minigans already know how to do the football thing. So until we talk next time, roll on, baby.